Okay, this is called Vamp Till Ready. Y'all know that musical term, Vamp Till Ready? No. But it would be better if we could get it on because I can do that. I asked for all the finalist papers when I was asked to do this because I wanted to see, at Stanford we had a similar program, an interdisciplinary program that also required a first-person narrative paper, and I was really interested in the kinds of things that our students in San Antonio might be thinking. So I asked for all the papers, and that was a good thing. It helped me to understand more deeply what it is that you all are doing and what you're about. But even more interestingly, it led me into a way to be with you today. And I'll explain that in a minute. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be with you. This is your celebration, and I'm happy to be included. Today is also my grandfather, Stratos Catacalos' birthday. He was born in 1886 on the island of Imbros, Greece, in the Dardanelles. I would like to dedicate my presence here today to him. Your professors tell me that you've seen the Children of the Revolution segment about my family, and I will talk a lot about family today, and I'll be happy to take questions if you have them later. When I looked at the finalist papers, I came away with four concepts that seemed to be running through all of them. Some commonalities and some constancies that were really interesting, and those four things are passion, discovery, metaphor, and lifelong learning. Every one of these papers had those four elements. As one who believes that the best and deepest learning is driven by need, by the learner's personal urgency and desire, that is, from the inside out, not the outside in, I can't think of any four concepts that will better serve future teachers and their students: passion, discovery, metaphor, and lifelong learning. Thank you for being who you are, and for making these four elements central to your future lives as teachers, learners, and citizens of the multiple communities in which each of you participates. As I read your papers, a call and response structure kept circling through my mind. Your pieces ran chords with various poems of mine, so I'd like to follow that serendipitous path with you. Perhaps it won't always be immediately clear how the response links to your piece, but making the necessary leap will, I hope, be part of what Dr. Martinello calls the detective work. And I haven't a poem in response to each of the 16 papers because we'd be here until midnight. But if I riff off of your piece, I hope you recognize it. Finally, please know that I made no value judgments, did not select the, quote, best pieces for response. Responses happened intuitively and depended entirely on whether I had a poem I thought connected with a given paper. So here goes. You don't need to raise your hand if you recognize yourself. Okay, this is to the newlywed researching his Latina wife's feminism, and also to the young woman studying patriarchy. Women Talk of Flowers at Dusk. San Antonio, Texas, 1976. Mérida, Yucatan, 1909. Some things can only be spoken in the dark, you'd say each time you told about Dolores, a name that means pain. We'd sit in dimming light at the chipped kitchen table where the past showed in layers of old paint. Exile from Mexico, your forced marriage, the Great Depression, you with a cigarette and a shot of Paul Jones, a brittle voice telling how your mother died in the cheap half-light of rented rooms in the Turks' barrio. She was a nurse who recognized the blood she coughed, but called it roses to ease your fears. Wacha was 12, and you 10. Even then you led. You hid in the jacaranda, fierce with tears, and barred your grandfather when he arrived too late in his fancy carriage and fine frock coat. Usted no tiene por qué estar aquí. No right to come here. You would always despise the jacaranda. Mi madre muerta, muerta. Y él? He sent for pins to hold the sheet tight to the body. The first Indian doctor in Merida, he'd raised his daughter to be a lady. Not his fault she'd come to this. He wouldn't look at her wasted frame, the flowers lining her face, the borrowed crucifix. She'd refused to stay well married, would not respect his choice, and turn a deaf ear, blind eye, the other cheek, to a husband cajoling conquests behind palm fans, his seed spent in every street. Instead, she'd made her own life in this damp barrio, nursing a company of women, the poor, everything the father struggled to forget. The funeral wagon stopped at the corner, too wide for the narrow alley. You, your sister, some Indian women wept at the gate. Only men were allowed at the grave, but he would not go. Yet he couldn't escape the wild marigold that fell from her temple as they hoisted her onto the pauper's dray. That sight was a slap, grandmother, that stung his face then and every time you told the story. Even now, the flame of that marigold is in me. You gone these many years, Dolores, almost a century. So too, it's come to me to heal the roses in the blood, to let go of the sins of the fathers, open the dark vaults of the heart. Let me begin here in lives that are and are not my own, to forgive even the jacaranda that blooms and blooms without mercy. It's going to be a little awkward because I'm trying to do things with. Okay. Oh, goody. We love text. Test. Can you hear anything? No, not as well.
Just louder. It's not as good. It needs to be louder.
Well, no, it's okay. It's unwieldy, but you know. Okay, can you hear now? Yay! 2 hands, guys. 2 hands. Okay. Thank you. Okay, this piece is in response to the migrant worker's son. And I should explain that this piece has 2 interwoven stories, and it gets a little confusing just to listen to it. It's better to see it on the page. But then, That's just too bad, isn't it? It's called Califas Coast Road, Monterey, California, February 1996. It carries an epigraph that's an old Chicano movement slogan, Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. We're here and we're not leaving. When sea-bent acacias flatten to angles and lean east in golden bloom, what is said about the nature of resistance, of lo nuestro? So many names are owned: Buena Vista, Santa Cruz, El Camino Real, Acacia itself, outshining the treasure armored men tore so much flesh to reach, wounding even the bodies we breathe in now. Is the nighthawk perched on the light pole kin to the eagle on the cactus? Simón, seguro que sí. Mi comadre watches her mother being beaten about the head, drunken father. The woman continues to smoke como si nada, pulls her leopard print robe a little closer, like nothing, like disdain. Cuando sintió mi alma tu desdén, lloró tanta sangre el corazón, y la ilusión querida que dio aliento a mi vida se transformó en amarga decepción. A 30s ballad. They used to dance in and out of each other's arms, her red skirt flaring, heart-shaped lips. And now the robe drawn closer, now the child watching. Por eso es grande, muy grande el dolor. Two Cecilias today, one dark, la querida Chela. The blonde one calls cease, banters, "You people from Texas are sure diehards. I mean, you don't give up. I knew this one guy, he had to let you know." Mi comadre finishes a scene. She's directing. I saw a woman speaking Spanish. I saw a woman in another country. Actors workshop. Someone does a scene, and the others say what they saw. Wrong, Professor. The woman you saw is down the street, up at 4 each morning, past bone-tired, selling tacos from a quilted truck. Redwood City, Michoacán. We're diehards, Cecilia. We don't give up. At Safeway, a small boy asks his mom, "Can we watch the Big Green movie tonight?" What's that? A healing movie? Does it matter where we are? Does it advance the plot? Scene. I saw a little girl in Floresville, Texas. I saw a little girl riding Santa, wanting Dorothy's real red shoes. Araceli Diaz, age 8. And please make my Uncle Toño get better. That's the best present we need so much. Scene. Mi comadre keeps leopard print pillows on her couch, restores them every time she moves, new piping and black velvet backs. Writers of color are still bound to content. No nos dejamos, and can't leave ourselves behind. If they say Bernal instead of Bernal, have we all lost something? And if they get us to say Bernal, ¿qué más se pierde? Artichoke fields glisten at their roots, silver in seacoast light. Not water, plastic sheets to keep the weeds down. So when the lamps come on in the farm workers' houses at dusk, is the shine the same? And the light that sees but is not seen, naming Concepcion's cancer? Are we to be thankful? How many rainbow lounges slathered with neon and chrome does it take to light up the roadside cross and dried flowers on the spot where Juventino Flores Magaña was struck pedaling uphill at dawn? Thoughts of home in the crash of waves. Monte del Lago, Pasatiempos Street, Betabel RV Resort, Beekeeper's Paradise. We aren't going because de alguna manera we've always been here. Mi comadre keeps those leopard print pillows on the spot where her mother sat that day. And even when we're gone, we'll be here. Our gods coiled in 1,000 names, in the storytelling parts of every dreamer, windows facing the sea, an uprising, faded blue stucco studded with light. And this is for the Texas transplant using the train metaphor. Her train goes into Texas history quite a bit. Homesteaders for the Edwards Aquifer. They came for the water, came to its sleeping place here in the bed of an old sea, the dream of the water. They sank hand and tool into soil where the bubble of springs gave off hope, fresh and long, the song of the water. Babies and crops ripened where they settled, where they married their sweat in the ancient wedding, the blessing of the water. They made houses of limestone and adobe, locked together blocks descended from shells and coral, houses of the bones of the water, shelter of the water. And they swallowed the life of the lime in the water, sucked its mineral up into their own bones, which grew strong as the water, the gift of the water. All along the counties they lay, mouth to mouth with the water, fattened in the smile of the water, the light of the water. Water flushed pure through the spine and ribs of the birth of life, the old ocean, the stone, the home of the water. And this is to all who wrote about family history, and there was a great deal of that. I was very, very pleased to see how much of that there was, and to see how many questions you're asking your families and asking yourselves, and finding out the story of your particular place on earth. This is called Catacalos. Our name is correctly transliterated with a K, but somehow it got changed to a C. We don't know exactly where. At least it didn't get changed the way some people did. We know a family here by the name of Carson, and their name is now their name was Caranzulis, and now they're Carson, because the guy at Ellis Island didn't know how to say Caranzulis, so he said, Carson, you be Carson. Anyway, okay, good. We're Carson. So we got to keep those. Catacalos. The old man, we always called him. We said it with respect. Even when he embarrassed us by wearing his plaid flannel work shirt to church under the fine blue suit one of his up-and-coming sons, the 3 prides of his life, had bought him. Even when he spent hours straightening used nails when we could afford to buy him new ones, so he could build the hundreds of crooked little plant stands that still wobble in the corners of our houses. He had come off a hard island birthplace, a rock long ago deserted by the gods, but still sopping with the blood of its passing from hand to hand, Greek to Turk, Turk to Greek, and back again. As if everything had not always belonged to the sea, he said, and to the relentless light that hurt the eyes of statues and children alike. He was brought up on routine whippings every Sunday, before the fact punishment to fit any crime. His father, the miller, followed the wisdom that parents can't be everywhere at once, and in 7 days, any boy is bound to do something deserving a beating. Besides, by his own admission, he was not such a good shepherd, always getting sidetracked, caring for some sick bird or dog or donkey that followed him everywhere ever after and got mixed up with the goats and sheep. A draft dodger from the Turkish army, he braved the maze of Ellis Island alone at 16, escaping with his last name intact and his first name changed to Sam. New York fed him dog food those first few months when he couldn't read the labels and only knew from the pictures that the cans were meat and cheap. He used to laugh about that, said it was just as good as some of that Spam and stuff they sell nowadays. Anyway, Sam was the darling of immigrant flop houses, giving away counsel and sometimes money, always finding someone who was a little worse off than he was. He hoboed all the way to Seattle, where he pretended to be a high-flying carpenter and was saved by Hagia Sophia from a fall that would otherwise have meant certain death. Then he came to where they were burning Greeks out of Oklahoma, and anyone who could kept moving and opened a hamburger stand a little farther south. In San Antonio, he rigged up a brightly painted, horse-drawn popcorn and ice cream wagon and made the rounds on the west side, never quite making more than a living, since he always told poor kids to pay him whenever they got the money. The hamburger stands came next, the cafe on Produce Row that some old market hands still remember, the ideal spot on South Presa, where every hobo and derelict from here to either coast knew he could collect a free meal. Good old Sam. But his wife was always angry. She wanted a house of her own, something more than glass beads. She hated the way he was always attracting winos and gypsies and cousins from everywhere who camped on her red velvet cushions while he was out working hard to give it all away. She was from Lagos, Jalisco, and when they'd met, it hadn't been so much about love as it had been simply time to get married. That's what she always said. Sam never said much about it one way or the other, except to smile and tell us she'd had a hard life. Still, they must have had a little something special going, seeing how back then he spoke only Greek, a little broken English, and she spoke only Spanish. They were married through an interpreter. Sam wore an ill-fitting suit and carried a brown paper bag full of sandwiches he had made so as not to let the guests go hungry. Years later, when they were old, she had never learned English and he had never bought her a house. He'd spent years in his by now perfect Spanish trying to get her to see how there was always some poor devil who needed just a little help. When she complained the loudest, he just listened patiently and went about setting out his sugar water in bottle caps to feed the ants. A smiling survivor, a fat, soft heart, the old man. We still say it with respect. Thank you. It's good to read that on his birthday, I think. I'm running out of time here, so I think I'm going to sadly have to skip some things. I'm going to go directly to Lupe, don't you think? If you want afterwards, if you have questions, of course, that's wonderful. But if you want afterwards to see the others that I was going to read, I'll certainly share those with you. Or I'll give them to Claudia and she can share with you what was going to happen. So this is the piece that I wanted to close with because of your being future teachers and because, again, this is an extraordinary program and you are extraordinary people for being in it. This is for you and all your students. David Talamantes on the last day of second grade. David Talamantes, whose mother is at work, leaves his mark everywhere in the schoolyard, tosses pages from a thick sheaf of lined paper high in the air, one by one, watches them catch on the teacher's car bumpers, drift into the chalky, narrow shade of the water fountain. One last batch, stapled together, he rolls tight into a makeshift horn, through which he shouts, "David!" and "David, yes!" before hurling it away hard and darting across Brazos Street against the light. The little sag of head and shoulders, when safe on the other side, he kicks a can in the gutter and wanders toward home. David Talamantes believes birds are warm-blooded, the way they are quick in the air and give out long strings of complicated music, different all the time, not like cats and dogs. For this, he was marked down in science, and for putting his name in the wrong place, on the right with a date instead of on the left with science, and for not skipping a line between his heading and answers. The X's for wrong things are big, much bigger than David Talamantes' tiny writing. Write larger, his teacher says, in red ink across the tops of many pages. Messy, she says on others where he has erased and started over, erased and started over. Spelling, language expression, sentences using the following words. Neck. I have a neck name. No. 20s, 30s. Think again. He's good in art, though. Makes 70 on Reading Station Artist's Corner, where he's traced and colored an illustration from Henny Penny. A goose with red and white striped shirt. A hen in a turquoise dress. Points off for the birds, cloud, and butterfly he's drawn in freehand, not in the original picture. 25 points off for writing nothing in the blank after "This is my favorite scene because." There's a page called Rules. Listen, always working, stay in your seat. Raise your hand before you speak, no fighting, be quiet. Rules copied from the board. No grade, only a huge red check mark. Later, there is a test on rules. Listen, alle erking, seste nou snit, raars und for stick, no fine be kite. He gets 70 on rules, 10 on spelling. An old man stops to pick up a crumpled drawing of a large family crowded around a table, an apartment with bars on the windows in Alassane Courts, a huge sun in one corner saying, "Too much noise." After correcting the spelling, the grade is 90. Nice details. And there's another mark on this paper and all the others. The one in the doorway of La Rosa Beauty Shop, the one that blew under the pool table at La Tenampa, the ones older kids have wadded up like huge spitballs, the ones run over by cars. On every single page, David Talamantes
has crossed out the teacher's red numbers and written in giant letters, blue ink, yes, David, yes.